Lexus's first ever three-row crossover, not SUV, not that LX or GX, the TX just debuted in Austin. Well, should I say for the media? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. I came down with that terrible sickness that has been plaguing the world for the last 3 years at this point. Bad timing, but at least I got it before I head to Japan with David Chao. That'll be happening in just a couple of weeks for the Japan Mobility Show. And so I'm bringing David on the channel today, David from Automotive Press. He was able to go to Austin to drive the TX, and what better person to ask about his thoughts on the build quality, what it's like to drive, etc., since I can't share my own impressions this time around. David, how's it going? You just came back from hot Austin. Oh, I'm assuming it was hot there. It's Austin. So how was it, and how are you doing?
It was a lot of fun actually, and yes, it was really hot. We saw some bats at night also,
Yes.
because that's where they are. But
Yeah.
you know what? I'm just excited to be able to drive the TX, give you some feedback, give everyone some feedback, and you know what? It's a great car, so can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Lexus has needed this vehicle in their lineup since essentially when the RX came out. I don't know when exactly the Acura MDX came out, maybe a couple of years after the RX. But Lexus just never has had an answer to the
Yeah.
MDX, and the MDX is a best-selling luxury crossover in America. And now they finally have it. So it's great to see that competition heating up, and great to see that product stack improve for Lexus. So
It's a way
uh,
overdue, right?
it would.
Way overdue. Finally, it's here.
Yes. Yeah. About 2 decades overdue, but
Yeah,
better late than never, you know.
yeah,
We
exactly.
could talk about other Toyota and Lexus products that are far overdue, but we got to stay on track on this video. All right. So, one of your bread and butter sort of videos, since you're an engineer and you come from a background of quality control and production quality, and you really like to check out panel alignment, build quality, paint quality. So, let me know right off the bat, because this is going to be, well, it is being produced in the Indiana
Right.
plant alongside the Grand Highlander and the Toyota
Right.
Sienna. So I'm wondering, this is their first Lexus vehicle. David, what kind of quality should we expect from the new Lexus three-row crossover?
Okay, thanks for asking, Kirk. So yeah, I did my usual check. I used my gauge to check the panel gaps, the alignment, and I also did the paint thickness gauge thing. And then, so I went through the whole car. And it was interesting because I'm not sure if you remember, but when I did the review on the Grand Highlander, I really noticed that it was significantly better than the Highlander, like normal Highlander that's also produced in
Wow.
Indiana. Because
Okay.
I owned the 2020 Highlander, right, for 3 years.
Right.
And the gap was okay, but not great, like around 4 to 4.5 millimeters. And some of the alignment was also pretty good, but not great, by, let's say, other Toyota standard. But the Grand Highlander improved a lot. So I was thinking, okay, somehow they must have improved it because it's influenced from the Lexus TX, but they're both built in the same line, mostly same equipment, but not identical. And so I was curious about it. So I went and measured all the different panels, and it was around between 2.9 millimeters in the front and 3 millimeters all the way on the side and all the way to the back, a little bit more on the rear hatch. So that's like world class. There's a very few cars that can actually hit 3 millimeter
Sub 3.
or
Yeah.
less. I think the Grand Highlander was around 3 or 3.1 or something, so it's very close.
Wow.
So you would fit in terms of alignment. It's actually as good as anything I've seen from Japan, like compared to my
Whoa.
Lexus GX, which is also 3 millimeter. It's
So,
honestly, I couldn't tell
wow.
the difference.
So right at the top of the industry, for luxury vehicles, it's at least those models you saw, you put your hands on, you've driven, are built, at least from what you were able to measure on the exterior. Seemingly it's built very, very well all the way
Yeah,
around. That's
built
great
really
to see.
well. Yeah, and I checked a few of the TX, not just ones, and they were all around 3
Wow.
millimeter. And like there are very few cars that can hit 3, right? Because most
Right.
European brands are around 3.5. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was really impressive.
Lexus also, they need to have better paint quality, thicker paint, higher quality paint. Did you see any differences between
Mhm.
the TX and the Grand Highlander with your measuring?
Right. So that's a good question. So I did a couple of things. One is to measure the thickness of the paint, which
Mhm.
is the total amount of thickness of all the paint that's applied on top of the sheet metal. So that's the primer, the base paint, and the clear coat. And it was about 350 350, between 300 and 350 microns. Usually, all Toyota cars are around 100 to 120, and the Grand Highlander, if I recall correctly, was around 120 to 150 microns. So it's almost twice as thick. So it was almost, I was curious as to if the one I was measuring had a additional clear coat. And so I did ask the chief engineer who was there from Japan. And because I know they run through the same paint shop, the equipment is the same. But he did say that the formulation and application of the paint for the Lexus TX is different from the Grand Highlander. They use a different paint as well. So it looks like they use a thicker paint, and possibly maybe there's one more layer of clear coat that wasn't or that isn't on the Grand Highlander. So, I mean, usually almost all cars are around 150 microns, typically below 200. So now these are kind of pre-production models. So, you know, the paint thickness could be off a little bit, but it seemed thicker than almost all the other Lexus and Toyota models I came across.
That's
and the
impressive.
paint quality was excellent. It was really very reflective, good clear coat, no kind of weird, you know, abnormal things, and no orange peel. It was really good paint.
That's surprising to me because my expectations, I mean, the expectations for a Lexus is high, but for a new vehicle off of a new assembly line that's no Lexus has ever been built there. You have new Lexus employee, like the restrictions and the requirements for you to be a Lexus vehicle assembler compared to a Toyota, like there's a night and day difference. So I didn't know what to expect, but looks like so far so good.
So far,
in terms of the quality department. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I also asked the chief engineer, like, what did they do to set the Lexus production line there? And he said all the Lexus Takumi specialists from Japan, from Canada, also from Kentucky plant were there to work together with a local team to get it up and running. So they got a lot of help to get it. They brought the best
they brought the best from around the world. 3 different places where they produce Lexuses, in Cambridge and Kentucky, as well as over in Japan. They brought the very best to show. That's amazing. That's what you would expect for Lexus quality. All right, let's get on to one of the things I've been really excited for. And this is a powertrain that's going to be shared with the new Century SUV. It's the plug-in hybrid V6 with the ECVT. But so it's got no traditional gears, so it's more like any other Toyota hybrid for the most part, except the new ones that have the 6-speed, and then maybe the truck platform that have the 8 or 10-speed. But that's different. So we have the K platform with a V6 hybrid. We've seen V6 hybrids in the past, but now it's a plug-in hybrid with 406 horsepower. I want to hear all about it. Lay it on thick.
Well, first of all, you know, we were all surprised, right? The fact that they even decided to do a 3.5 V6, because we thought for sure that's gone. But we asked that question, and the chief engineer said that there was sufficient request and demand from dealers that they really want a V6 somehow remaining in the lineup. So I guess they decided that if they have to keep one larger engine, then make it the flagship with a plug-in hybrid. And so that's my understanding. So I'm really glad they did that, because the big difference between driving this one and all the other TX was that when the electric, when the batteries ran out, and therefore it kind of went back to the traditional V6 hybrid system, then you got all the beautiful feel of V6 engine, right? Smooth, quiet. It just runs like any other Toyota Lexus proven V6 engine. And you get that kind of very luxurious feel with that V6 engine working with the hybrid system. And you know the thing is, it's not as fast, like it's not as quick when you step on the gas compared to a 2.4 turbo, because you don't have that high torque rating at low RPM. But it felt more like what we're used to with the Lexus, kind of smooth delivery, softer feel, but just very luxurious feel, quiet, very quiet. So I loved it. I said on my review that if I were to buy a TX, or if I were to recommend someone buying a TX, then it definitely would be the plug-in hybrid, because you get best of both worlds, right?
Absolutely.
But it didn't feel quite as gutsy. You know, when you step on the gas, it didn't quite take off the same way 2.4 turbo with hybrid did. But I like to feel better for sure.
Yeah. A better powertrain for livability. You know, this week I've been super spoiled. I've had a very similar powertrain from Volvo and the V60 T8 Polestar Recharge.
And that's a nice car.
But it doesn't have a V6, but it's got the 8-speed iShin in it. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's more, it's got much more of the performance edge, and I think I think Volvo's gonna have a little bit of a performance edge. I mean, the power is
probably, yeah.
455 horsepower, and it's impressive what they've been able to do. But I like seeing Toyota and Lexus come out kind of with their own unique variant of
System,
it,
yeah.
and it might be more efficient. I wouldn't be surprised if Toyota and Lexus's plug-in is more efficient when you run out of electricity in the battery, but it's cool. I would like to see more of those sort of powertrains out there for Toyota and Lexus, and Volvo can keep making it as long as they make internal combustion cars. Because we know Lexus
Yeah,
and Volvo, they all want to be fully electric by 2030, and it's changing times for sure.
definitely.
Uh,
Oh, by the way, the CVT on the plug-in hybrid also worked really well. Like it didn't feel like some of the traditional CVT where you can really feel it trying to, work itself out sort of thing.
yeah,
But on this one felt natural. You couldn't really tell that there was a CVT
that's good.
underneath. Like it's really smooth. So yeah, whatever they did it really well, I
No,
think.
yeah, and I can't wait. Well, it sounds
And
like it would be a worthy powertrain for 170 plus $1,000
exactly.
Century SUV,
Yeah.
but we
I
get it in a car that's going to be, well, half the price. I don't think we have pricing on the 550h plus for Canada or the United States, because I think
yeah,
production starts in December or
a little bit
something
later
like
on.
that. You probably might have heard something
Yeah.
different when you were there, but
Yeah,
um
I do definitely think that there is a kind of this, advantage we have with a plug-in hybrid because it's sharing the engine with a Century SUV, and so obviously they designed it for both
yeah.
vehicles, and so the TX has this added, advantage of basic adopting a powertrain that was designed for something much more expensive, right?
Yeah. The last time we saw the Century share a powertrain with a Lexus, as far as I'm aware, was the LS 600HL with a 5-liter V8 ECVT hybrid setup.
Hmm.
So pretty cool. It's,
Yeah, it's
comes kind of
cool.
full circle. You did mention that you would recommend the plug-in hybrid if someone were, if you had a friend or if you were getting one yourself.
Mm,
What are your thoughts on the base engine, the 350,
mm,
the 2.4 turbo with
right.
275 horsepower? Do you think that is worth the price of admission? Because this thing comes in, I
Mm,
think, starting around 55,000. I know I'm not going to get too much into pricing. I've done another video, or probably two other videos on it, to be honest. But what are your
right.
thoughts on this as an entry level powertrain? Because we see it on entry level powertrain in Toyota models,
Yeah.
and I just want to get your thoughts on it here on a big 3-row Lexus.
Yeah, so I drove the 2.4 turbo and then obviously the 2.4 turbo with hybrid. And then in
Yeah.
terms of base model, like if you're just driving it normally, like I did in some parts of the driving, like just drive around town, go up to the highway speed, and then drive normal roads. I mean, honestly, it feels fine. Like it doesn't feel stressed. It's quiet. It's got lots of pep. Like you step on it, it got pretty good acceleration and so
Yeah.
forth. I think it's when you step on the gas hard, like when you have to, pass a car or going up the hill, then there's no hiding that this is a turbo 4, not a
Right.
V6. And so you hear a little bit more sound and, something that you just can't escape from having a 4-cylinder.
Yeah.
And it's not, I wouldn't say it's struggling to go up the hill, but there's a 4-cylinder engine underneath the hood, at least for me.
Yeah.
So I think most people, like 95% of people, wouldn't notice it, and for them, this will be sufficient. It'll be good
Mhm.
enough, even in this, sort of a expensive high-end 3-row crossover. But anyone who is a little bit more used to either having a V6 or something even more than the V6 might not like it, I think. They'll have to
Yeah.
go for 2.4 hybrid, turbo hybrid, the same engine, the Grand Highlander, as a hybrid max. Because with that one, with electric motor kicking in at the same time,
Mhm.
the engine feels different. It's not quite as noisy. It doesn't feel as stressed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it feels less like a 4-cylinder. It's closer to the V6 feel. You still get a little bit of a noise, but it has such a good amount of torque that you step on
Mhm.
it and you just enjoy that a really good acceleration coming off the start. So I would say buy the 2.4 hybrid or the plug-in hybrid. If you really have to, if you really want a 3-row Lexus and you just don't want to pay that much money, then there's nothing wrong with the 2.4. And like I said, most people probably wouldn't really care that it doesn't
Yeah.
have the
I think
the best powertrain, but
right. I think the sporting enthusiasts will want the electrified powertrains. But it's great, because the electrified powertrains also give you better efficiency. So
Yeah.
it's a tip like when I think of electric cars, when you go up in powertrain, you go down in range.
Hmm.
With adding electrification to a gas engine, you go up in power and you go up in efficiency and
Yeah.
range. So that's cool to have that sort of benefit here. I would
I
have
mean,
loved, this is just a personal take, I would have loved to seen that V6 entry level hybrid that we used to have on the RX be
I
the entry
agree.
level powertrain
Yeah.
here. Fully hybrid TX lineup. Don't need the
Yeah.
2.4. If you want the 2.4, get the Grand Highlander. But the V6 hybrid on the RX 450h, it got around 30 miles per gallon, but
Mm.
they could have updated it with newer hybrid technology. Could have got slightly more efficient, slightly more powerful. That's what I have liked to see, but we don't live in a perfect world where we get every single powertrain that we want. But that would have
Right.
given us a 450, a 500, and a
I know.
550. So
Yeah.
it would have been
Or
cool.
or maybe at the least don't even offer the base 2.4, right? Just have all hybrid systems. I was a little bit
I would be okay
surprised,
with that
right?
too. Even
Yeah.
if it increases the power or the starting price just a little bit,
Yeah.
I
I
think yeah,
would
the
have made
entry
more
level
sense.
if the entry level was 500, I think I wouldn't have any gripes with that. So
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. But it's
All
a good, I
right.
mean, it's a good powertrain. The more I drive
Yeah,
it, the 2.4, the more I like it.
me too.
And
The 2.4
so
hybrid.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
exactly.
even the base 2.4, the more I
Okay.
drive it, I think I'm appreciating it more
Yeah,
because they're tuning it differently for each iteration of the car they're using.
gotcha.
And I said when I drove the Grand Highlander, this is the best iteration of the 2.4 I've seen.
I agree. I
Yeah,
liked it better in the Grand Highlander than I did in the NX and RX,
yeah,
which is
yeah, definitely.
surprising because those being Lexuses, they should be about. I don't know what the main difference is, but I just felt like it was more refined in the Grand
Definitely, yeah,
Highlander,
more refined. I
and
think so too.
the 8 speed is very impressive too.
Yeah.
Moving
Mm,
on from the outside, past the powertrains to the inside,
mm,
on interior design materials. Let's just start with materials because when I
mm,
look at the Grand Highlander and the Lexus TX, there doesn't seem to be that much of a difference
mm,
separating the two. The Lexus definitely has better materials. I've been in both of them, haven't
mm,
driven the TX obviously, but at least visually, there's not that big of a difference visually. I want to get your impressions with
mm.
you actually driving the vehicle on the quality and the design on the interior of the TX.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the TX is following the similar trend with all the other, Lexus modeling, especially the RX, in keeping it simple, business-like, back to the basic kind of design.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe more European in some ways, so less wood, less
Yeah, I can see
fancy
that.
chrome and so forth. And that's the direction they're going. I suppose, I mean, they must know something that we don't know in terms of what the buyers want, maybe especially in Asia. Well, actually, this is not going to be sold in Asia anyway, but I'm not too crazy about the interior. I think each of the materials are really good, like the quality of the materials, the parts fit,
Yeah.
and then even there's also kind of Alcantara type materials that were used in some parts and looks really good. It's like each of the actual fit and finish is superb. Absolutely no complaints
Mhm.
whatsoever. But just the overall feel when I come in, especially after driving the Genesis GV80 last week, and I have the X5 this week, the BMW
Yeah.
X5, it doesn't feel quite as luxurious inside. So I'm not quite sure why they're doing it because I think they could have made it a bit fancier
Mm-hmm.
inside.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with the interior, just maybe Toyota or Lexus buyers like it this way, but I feel like we lost a little bit of the traditional Lexus luxury feel with the interior
I
in terms of
completely agree.
design.
Yeah, I mean the lack of wood touches that permeated the brand for decades.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough for me, but yeah, no, I think there's also a lack of contrast. I remember the door panels, most of the
Yeah.
trims just a blacked out door panel. I know the materials are nice, they're soft, and the materials change from different parts of the door panel, but when
Mm.
you look at it, it's just very plain.
It is a bit
Uh,
plain, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Somehow this is their new trend. Like on my Lexus RZ or RZ, same thing, right? It's all blacked
yeah,
out.
the
There's
RZ is
no
very
contrast.
minimal.
Yeah,
But if
yeah,
you can get,
minimalist.
but here's the thing, what I fell head over heels for that
Mm.
caramel interior. I don't know if you had a chance to
Yeah,
see the caramel
I saw that
interior.
one. Yeah, that one's nice.
Oh,
That
with
one's really
with the
nice. Yeah,
suede everywhere, that was
that one is nice.
excellent. And it reminded me a little bit of the interior there's a caramel interior on the new CX-90 from Mazda
Yeah,
that
that
is to
one's
die
really nice
for.
too. Yeah, that one's just
So
beautiful
we'll talk
interior.
more about some
Yeah.
competitors at the end,
Okay.
but I think it's the same for your market. But for some reason, the hybrids in North America, at least in the United States, anyways, they only come with 6 seats.
Hmm.
That is going to alienate, in my opinion, some buyers right off the bat. Um, do you have any guesses on why that would be, or any guesses on why maybe Acura was able to include that removable like bench seat that you can, I think
Right.
you can stow it in the back? I thought that was an amazing feature for Acura. They really know their market.
Hmm.
You could essentially have captain's chairs or just put that really nice leather bound seat in the middle, and you can have a
Right.
bench, and it's kind of like a minivan. I have the Sienna's
Yeah.
like that. I have this middle seat that is just stowed in the back, and then if and when we have more kids or do some carpooling, we can increase the cargo capacity. And so,
Right.
like, I'm seeing Lex has been needing this 3-row crossover for so long, but if you want to use its space adequately with people, you have to forego the best powertrains, which is a really strange thing. So I'm just going to leave the ball in your court
Hmm.
and listen.
Yeah, I think they're trying to position the hybrids as more upscale versions of the TX. And so for whatever reason, their definition of upscale is the captain chairs. And they must have done some kind of research to show that whatever some percentage of buyers are not using a bench seat somehow when they buy a more upscale model. So that's all I can think of. I didn't ask that question directly to them, but someone did ask about just in general 6-seat versus 7-seat, and their answer was that they like to position the 6-seater as more of a upscale model with a feel of being in a first class cabin in aircraft and having a little bit more private space and space between the seats. So that's all I can think of, is that their demographics for the higher end models must be such that they don't need extra seats. So, but I agree though, it wouldn't have been too difficult to offer 7-seat on the higher end
Right.
models, right?
Well, at
Yeah.
least I mean here it's I don't it's a bit strange. So like I think it's the same in the TX as it is in the Grand Highlander, is that
Mhm.
if you get the captain's row model, you have this like removable cup tray between the captain's chairs. Is it the
I think
same on
so.
the TX?
I think there was something there. There's some kind of, I can't remember now, but yes, I think there was something
Yeah.
there.
Removable cup tray is not that big of a deal, but if you have a removable seat, that really maximizes the vehicle for what it is. It's
Yeah,
a
I
3-row
agree.
people mover, and you take out the seat, it really puts a ding in its
Yeah. Well,
usability, in my opinion.
they keep emphasizing that every seat is the best seat in the car. That's sort of their advertising slogan. So I guess somehow they're saying they want to convince you, I guess, that the third row seat is just as comfortable as second row, so don't worry about having a bench seat. I think that's where they're
Yeah.
going with
I
this.
see that as a distraction. Don't focus
Yeah.
on the lack of a 7 seat. All the other seats are really nice.
Yeah, I know, I agree with
Yeah.
you on that one. But who knows, right? Within enough feedback, they'll probably change it,
I think they have the
next year.
ability in the coming years to add it. When I drove the Grand Highland, I actually haven't driven it at home, used it with the kids yet. But I'm really looking forward to that. I saw my first one on the road
Mm,
this afternoon,
okay,
and it was a platinum with the 2.4 turbo non-hybrid. But
non-hybrid.
anyways, with the Grand Highlander, I noticed that there was a lot of vibration coming through the floor. It was very quiet, but there was a lot of
Mm,
vibration and harshness coming through the cabin and the floor. And I also noticed that when I threw it through the turns in Australia, in Hawaii,
mm,
it felt a little sloppy. It wasn't as tight as I wanted it to be. It felt like the car was kind of twisting a little bit. So I wanted to
mm.
get your thoughts. I know there are some nice roads in Austin, but I don't know if you got a chance to push it at all. But I want to know your
Mm.
thoughts on NVH and stiffness as well as handling characteristics.
Okay, good question. Well, first of all, I drove the Grand Highlander here in Vancouver I had it for a week. So I had the production version, not
Yeah.
the prototype or pre-production version that you might have driven. And the Grand Highlander felt fine. Like it felt very flat around the corners. I didn't sense any vibration from, well, at least the one I drove, which was a Hybrid Max. And then, how I can describe the TX is that everything is just a notch better, but not substantially better. Like, for example, it's definitely quieter. They're using acoustic glass, so it's definitely quieter on the TX. It rides a little bit better because of different suspension tuning and calibration. engine has a little bit more power because of premium fuel, so it also feels just a little bit faster, not by much. But in terms of cornering around, like we didn't have too many twisty roads there. But it felt just a little bit more of a softer, luxurious version of Grand Highlander. The production version of Grand Highlander I drove in Vancouver felt fine. Like in terms of structural rigidity, the body stiffness, vibration, I didn't have any of that problem without mine.
Do you have really nice roads up in Vancouver? Like, are smooth roads? Do you have a lot of potholes or
both.
both?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, there's some roads I purposely drive that's really, really, really bad, bumpy roads with the potholes, and the Grand Highlander was really good. At least the one I drove, the one I had. And the TX felt better. It's clearly, I don't know what, maybe it's 5 to 10% quieter, better in terms of overall feel. But it's not, it's not 20% better. It's not 30% better. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do with the same platform, right?
Could you feel any differences with the 500h F Sport Performance? Because that's the adaptive dampers, bigger brakes. I think it has bigger brakes. Did you feel any difference with that Sport Tune model at all?
Yeah, when you went around the corners and you step on the brake hard and there's some bumpy road, it did feel like it handled those better on the 550 with adaptive dampers. But to be honest, the one without adaptive suspension was actually pretty good already.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
wouldn't say,
So that's good.
I wouldn't say it's a huge difference. There is some difference, but not a huge.
Gotcha. Okay. So small improvements, but improvements across the board, NVH and
Yeah,
handling and like
definitely. Yeah.
solid feeling of the vehicle.
Yeah, and
All right.
even the base model was really quiet, like ridiculously quiet.
I
Like
believe it. Yeah.
cars passing by, you can't
Couldn't
even
hear
hear
them.
them.
Yeah.
So the whatever acoustic glass they're using, I think is also thicker glass, and also there's additional welding done
Mm,
on the body. The chief engineer said there's additional bonding and gluing adhesive, I should say.
adhesives. Yeah.
So the bodies are not just more structurally rigid, but there's more bonding, right? So it's
Perfect.
better, just sound deadening all around. Felt really quiet.
That's awesome. No, yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to test it. It's gonna be a lot
Mhm.
of fun. Hopefully it gets in the press fleet soon. All right.
Yeah.
Last question. It's totally subjective, but it's going to bring the
Mm.
competitors into the mix here. I'm just going to throw some competitors out there. You don't have to rank them first to last, but let me know like what you would be picking out of a handful of these really good options. All right. And I picked
Okay.
unibody options. I think
Sure.
the X7 might be a unibody option as
They're
well.
all unibody. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even
Unibody.
the Mercedes three rows art as well, but I didn't include them. I included only the Asians here. The Crown, well, not the Crown, but like the king of the segment, the MDX, the Grand Highlander, just because it shares so much with this vehicle, even
Hmm.
though it's not quote unquote luxury. A CX90, and you could pick your powertrain with that with
Mm.
plug-in hybrid inline six. The QX60, we talked about the QX60. You haven't driven one recently, but it is really
Mm.
good. I love
Hmm.
that car.
Mm.
And then also the GV80, which I haven't tested one with three rows yet, but I think obviously they all have their own strengths or weaknesses. But against the TX, which one are you picking, or are you
Mm.
picking the TX versus the competition? I want to hear it.
Sure. Well, I think it depends on what you're looking for. So if you want the sportiest, the best handling large three-row SUV, still the CX90.
Yeah, probably.
It has the sharpest steering feel, the best feedback on my steering. It felt more like a hydraulic power steering than electric steering on the CX90. It also felt a little bit faster in terms of steering feel, just purely steering feel. The I haven't driven the X7, but I do have the X5 this week. Comes pretty close. If not, the CX9 has a better steering feel, but the X5 felt a little bit sportier around the corners.
Gotcha.
So those two stand out if you just want pure, more fun to drive factor. But let's say in terms of quietness and comfort, I would say the TX is probably the best of the best. I would say, well, let me rephrase it. The GV80 is extremely comfortable, right? Very
Mhm.
soft, but almost to the fault. Like it's almost too soft. And
Yeah.
there's not much feel in terms of steering. So it feels very disconnected, right?
Mhm.
Whereas the Grand Highlander, but especially the TX, feels very comfortable, smooth, just serene in terms of feel, but you still feel somewhat connected to the road. So if you want maximum comfort and yet still have a reasonable amount of cornering and capability for handling, I think TX is the best one. MDX, I mean, when I drove that last year, I think if you compare to Type S, obviously that's amazing vehicle. But if you look at the normal MDX, I really like the V6 engine, right? You already know I would prefer that over a Turbo 4 anytime. Right. But the steering doesn't have much feel. That's one of my complaints I had about MDX. Almost like it's void of all feelings in steering. It's quick steering, but no feel. And the ride is also very harsh. I think the MDX set up very ride. A problem with the, I shouldn't say problem, but I think the calibration of suspension, somehow it didn't feel right to me. Gotcha. So I wasn't too impressed with that, but I love the powertrain and I love the Type S, obviously. So if I were to rank them in different manner, like if you want the most luxurious feel in terms of design, I mean, it's hard to beat the GV80. It just, that thing honestly feels like a $150,000 car, right? And it's just gorgeous interior. It doesn't have much of a sporty feel, and we still don't know the long-term reliability. So that's something that might hold me back from buying or recommending it. But just as a design, from design perspective, it's just a beautiful car, period. I think the Mazda CX-90 is definitely the best bang for the buck in terms of having something sporty. It's not as roomy as TX. It doesn't have the same reputation as Lexus. And it's not a Lexus, obviously. It's it's more of a Grand Highlander competitor. But I love that, and I would buy that in a heartbeat, especially the plug-in hybrid version. But the 3.3 inline six is just a really great engine. It's a little bit rough around the edges compared to BMW, but it's got such a great amount of power, right?
Yeah, it's very satisfying to drive it, which you can't say that about most three-row crossover, any crossover really. But yeah, the CX-90 is a joy to drive.
I think it's a real gem, for the price. It's built in Japan too, right? Just perfect quality.
Right, the build quality is fantastic.
Really good. QX60, I haven't driven that for a while, so I can't comment, but I do remember it being also quite a bit softer and not as fun to drive.
It's definitely not. It's way on the softer end, even more so than the MDX. But I would say it's more like the GV80 in terms of
more like a GV80,
just on more pure luxury. Super smooth. The shifts are very, very smooth on it. The V6 is butter. I don't remember the interior that much, but I see because it's been a while since I reviewed one, but the QX60 exterior, I'm always turning to see them because Infiniti has great designs. I mean, I just reviewed the Q50 and that design's held up over a decade. It still looks great. And the QX60, it's a really good design on the exterior, the headlights, the curves, the roof line is beautiful on it. So they did an amazing job with it, and they need to because it's their #1 seller. So
beautiful design. So, for me personally, if I were to buy a vehicle, I would say if it's just for me, it might still be the CX-90 just because it's more fun to drive.
Right.
But if I were to buy it for my family and my wife is also going to drive and so forth, I would say the TX just because I really, really like the overall package. But I'm not quite sure, like in terms of the difference in terms of, how much more you have to pay. I'm not quite sure if other people would consider it to be worthwhile paying that much more compared to Grand Highlander, because Grand Highlander is pretty close, not same, not anywhere being close.
But the powertrain is the same.
Its powertrain is the same, except for the plug-in hybrid. So that's why I said, if you're gonna buy the TX, buy the plug-in hybrid. If you don't need to buy the plug-in hybrid or you can't, then maybe get the Grand Highlander, but buy the Hybrid Max Grand Highlander. That's what I would recommend. And and especially if you want the Toyota Lexus quality,
and you're going to get more seats too.
Yeah,
you get more seats on the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max and the normal hybrid Highlander Grand Highlander. So
so those are some of my thoughts. I mean, they're all very good in their own ways. So who knows? But I suppose Toyota and Lexus will still have the highest resale value and best reliability overall. So if those things are important, you might want to still stick with those two brands. But
that's right.
But I think Mazda is pretty compelling
Their sales have been good.
version.
They're making a
Yeah,
lot of those CX90s, and they're
mm,
making a lot of money on them, which is what we want to see. We want to see these
exactly.
smaller brands thrive in today's market. So
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna see the factory again next month. So I'm looking forward to visiting it for the
right.
third time, I guess. But yeah, we'll see how they hold up after long term, I think.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on. I really wish I got a chance to drive the TX, but I feel like in some ways I learned more about it through you because you're so studious and knowledgeable about Lexus, and you ask the right questions while you're there to the right people. You know what you're doing. And I just want to thank you, as well as make sure to check out David's channel. David, go ahead and fill in for you in your channel real quick.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kirk. That was fun, and I just love being on your channel anyway. But yeah, if you have a chance, come and join me as well at Automotive Press. That's my channel, and Kirk and I share many similar insight, but also from different perspectives. I hope you guys enjoyed this segment of our collaboration video. And more than that, I just can't wait to go to Japan with you, Kirk, and feed you some really good Japanese food. And of course, have fun at the Japan Mobility Show, which is a new name that they have. So we
Yeah.
can't wait to go through all that stuff.
Right. It's going to be a blast. It's going to go so quick for me. I'm only there for about a week. But it's going to be jam packed with you showing me around the town a little bit,
Mm,
around Tokyo, showing you
yeah.
your favorite spots, and then also just working sun up to sundown, trying to provide the best content. It's going to be a madhouse at the what do they call it? Big show? What's
Big
the
a big site. It's a
big
big
site?
site.
Yes.
It's about
So
half an hour.
I'm excited to see it and experience it and share it not only with you but all of our followers as well. So thanks, David, and I'll catch you very soon. If not on a phone call, I'll see you in Japan before we know it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, Kirk.
All right, take care. Bye.